So this video is based on the Behavioural Economics series, which is on the YouTube channel, and we are going to be looking at anchoring. So what is anchoring? Anchoring is a particular form of priming effect whereby initial exposure to a number serves as a reference point and influences subsequent judgments. The process usually cares about our awareness, so in other words, subconsciously. And it's another way of making decisions and another tool of heuristics in terms of if we have options and we're wondering, okay, which one should we choose? How could we subconsciously take shortcuts into deciding which option to obviously select? So if we think about it from this point of view, imagine that we had a court case, identical crimes, but the suggested sentence for one was 10 years, whilst the suggested sentence for another was 30 years. Now, those 10 years and the 30 years acts as an anchor, and that influences the judge's sentence. So let's imagine the judge recognised that the crime was significant, and therefore in the left hand side they selected the maximum. But with regards to the suggested sentence of 30 years, the judge might recognise that actually that is a little bit harsh with the crime that's been committed, but still the anchor influences the decision that the judge makes, and therefore they sentence the defendant to 20 years. So even though it's the exact same crime, the use of the anchor influences the decision by the judge. So any aspect of the environment that has no direct relevance to a decision, but that nonetheless affects people's judgment, creating bias in favour of a particular decision. And this can be done via economic agents such as producers, especially with regards to price in their marketing mix. So, with regards to anchoring, by placing too much weight on an initial piece of information, which is obviously the reference point, or the anchor, and I'll give you some examples in a minute of this, our thoughts and the way in which we assess probabilities become distorted. So therefore the decision making that we carry out is going to be irrational. So as for its prevalence, anchoring is most common when we deal with new concepts or objects which we might not be able to completely understand all the information quickly. So if we look at it from this point of view, instantly we are drawn to the middle option because we believe it's the best value. The reason we believe it's the best value is because the $199 is the anchor, which we automatically might consider to be too expensive, but yet the $29 is perhaps too cheap, so we think it's low quality. So what we do instead is we go for the middle option, which we consider to be the best value. No reason for it. Is it the best value? Well, we might not know that. We haven't got the information, but subconsciously we are drawn to that option, and I'll delve into this example a little bit more later on. Now, what I'm going to do is going to show you an example of this via Steve Jobs when he launched the iPad.
And we'd like to show it to you today for the first time. And we call it the iPad.
At a packed news conference in San Francisco on Wednesday, Apple CEO Steve Jobs unveiled the iPad.
You can browse the web with it. It is the best browsing experience you've ever had. It's phenomenal to see a whole web page right in front of you. Every iPad has Wi-Fi in it, the latest and greatest Wi-Fi. But we're also going to have models of iPad with 3G, cellular wireless data built in, as well as Wi-Fi.
The iPad has been the subject of a huge amount of speculation over the last few weeks, and perhaps nothing has been debated more than its likely price, which some had put as high as $1,000. On Wednesday, Jobs announced a much lower starting price.
Just like we were able to meet or exceed our technical goals, we have met our cost goals. And I am thrilled to announce to you that the iPad pricing starts not at $999, but at just $499. For 32 gigabytes, it's $100 more. And for another $100 beyond that, you get 64 gigabytes of storage. The 3G models cost an extra $130 to build in the radios.
As we could see from the example from Steve Jobs, there was a couple of situations where there was not only an anchor, but there was also something that's known as a price decoy as well. And what we had was, with, for example, the different gigabytes, we had the anchor, we had the decoy, and we had the best value. And what I suppose the advice is that menus should include at least 3 options for the same item. Now, the best value item is, in other words, the one that the actual company wants to be selected the most. They recognise that the price anchor is probably not the best value, and actually customers might be put off. They don't necessarily want the price decoy, but they believe that, again, it might influence customers to then go for the middle option, believing it to be the best value. So the anchor and the decoy work together to try to get the customer to select, for example, the medium size. And you may see it in with regards to cinemas. You go to the cinema, you buy a popcorn, usually the super size is incredibly expensive and people think it's a rip-off, but yet they're not really attracted to the junior size, so they just instantly go for the medium size. So it can help influence this natural tendency by highlighting what they believe to be the best value, even though they haven't got the information to support it. So let's think about the decoy effect. Imagine you are shopping for a NutriBullet blender. Okay, you see 2 options. The cheap one at $89, that promotes 900 watts of power and a 5-piece accessory kit. The more expensive one is $149, and that's 1,200 watts, but has 12 accessories. And you're thinking, well, which one should we choose? And that's going to depend on some assessment of their relative value for money, and it's that comparison between the two. But it's not immediately apparent, though, that the most expensive option is actually better value. It's slightly less than 35% more powerful, but costs nearly 70% more. It does have more than twice as many plastic accessories, but what are they actually worth? So therefore, if we increase the options by a third, and this time we have this one. So what we've got now is we've got one for $125 offering 1,000 watts and 9 accessories. It enables you to, make what feels like a more considered comparison between the 3. For $36 more than the cheaper option, you get 4 more accessories and an extra 100 watts of power. But if you spend just $24 extra, you get further 3 accessories and 200 watts more, which is considered to be a bargain. So what is being, what's occurring is that the decoy effect and the anchor is starting to draw you in to the best value product. So choices often occur relative to what is on offer rather than based on absolute preference. The decoy effect is typically known as the asymmetrically dominated choice and occurs when people's preference for one option over another changes as a result of adding a third, similar but less attractive option. So if we think about it with regards to, again, another real life example, and this happened when we were looking at the hospitality sector in America, and we were looking at tips, and we were trying to think of ways that we could maybe increase the amount of tips for employees working in hospitality. Now what they found was, when they introduced the credit card systems, which is obviously being used more and more, the credit card systems automatically suggested a 30, 25 or a 20% tip. Now this caused passengers or customers to think of the 20% as the low tip, whereby the previous average was only around 8 to 10%. So since the installation of the credit card systems, average tips have now risen to 22%, and that's because of the anchor of 30% and obviously the decoy of 20%, which has created this new average of 22%.